Wanted to welcome you to our first webinar of this college application season. We are starting this session. It's called Understanding Early College Application Deadlines and Options. We will go over our presenters in just a moment. First, we want to talk about what this workshop series is. This is, as I said, the first of 5 that we're offering, and we have the flyer here for you to see other ones, and hopefully you've already received this, which is why you know to be here tonight, and you can hopefully plan ahead and register for other sessions as well. We're going to be talking about finding your college fit and building your college list, which Mr. Diaz and I actually presented on last spring at the College and Career Night. So this will be a little different with a different presenter group. So if you've attended it before, we encourage you to come again. We will also have a UC Insight, personal insight question and major choice session. So in the past, we've focused on the UC admissions and the A through G requirements and what are the pieces of the application. They'll review that a little bit, but it's really more focused on what they really are hoping to see in the personal insight questions or the essay, as well as how to select a major, because that's always been kind of a newer pressure point of how students can really manage that process. The Cal State system, the CSU, there's 23 campuses. So we really want to show our community all 23 campuses. There is life beyond San Diego State and Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Chico is there, San Francisco State, Cal State San Marcos. So there's a ton of options, and we want to highlight that for our community. And then financial aid night all the way in December, because many of you probably know the FAFSA is not being released until December this year. It's a new form. It used to be October. It's now December for this year. So it's kind of changing the way things will be done. And we're going to touch on that in this session as well tonight. Speaking of this session, I'm so excited to introduce to you our 2 co-hosts, Rick Diaz, the Regional Director of Admission for Southern Methodist University. Many of you have probably heard from Rick before. He's a huge partner of ours, and we're so happy that he's here to join us tonight. And then Chanelle Lary, who's our head counselor at Torrey Pines High School. She's been in the district for how many years, Chanelle? Like 10?
Well,
15,
if you
12?
count my intern year with you, Mrs. Cambra, this is year 12.
Yes, she was my intern. It feels like yesterday.
I know.
So we're excited for the 3 of us to present with you. And I'm Jayme Cambra. I'm our counselor on special assignment of college and career readiness. And I get to prepare all of these college and career events. And it's fun to reach out and connect with all of you. So thank you for being here tonight. We do have the question and answer feature on. So we encourage you to use that throughout this presentation if you have questions. Because it's a large group, we turned off the chat. We really want to focus on the content we're sharing with you, but we will be answering questions throughout the session if you ask them through the feature. And then at the end, we're going to highlight a few of the most common asked questions, because you all can't see the questions other people ask, to ensure that you benefit from the other information we're sharing as well. So please, we encourage you to use the Q&A feature. So today we are going to get into the conversation and kind of framing what we're talking about. Most of you on the call are probably here because you're interested in early college applications, and what does that mean, and how does it look to apply early or regular, and what do all the vocabulary mean, and what's the pros and cons. So we're going over all of that tonight. And if you're a student on the call, thank you for being here. If you're a parent of a student, thank you for being here, to kind of focus on who are we right now, and where should you be thinking, and how should you be feeling about this. We wanted to look at the applicant profile. So a student who even knows to get on this call on September 11th, before the major college application season has started, is probably already on the early chapter of their application cycle. So you're probably in a good place. So we are thinking, how prepared are you for this college application season? Is this something that you've been planning since middle school, all summer? Were you at like camps, and were you working on your essays, and were you, waiting by the computer for all the applications to open? Are you really dialed in and you're aware? Have you been going to college visits? Have you been emailing with college representatives? Or maybe you've done none of that, and all of that is okay. We're just trying to get a pressure point of who you are, and so you can understand, is this a right strategy for you? How invested are you in this specific college campus? Have you done your research? Do you know the data? Do you know the admission statistics? Have you visited the campus? Have you met people that go to that campus? Where are you on that spectrum? And then how informed are you about the opportunities, the majors, the requirements, the options on that campus or those campuses you're considering? Do you have a list that your neighbor told you about, or that maybe your parents wrote for you, or maybe you did it all on your own based on the research, and you've taken personality assessments, and you've really talked to people, and you've done a thorough investigation of who you are as a human being and what you want for the next 4 years of your life. And maybe some of you haven't started any of that. So we welcome all of you to be here, but just kind of have a moment to consider, where are you in this process as we launch into these options that we want to share with you. So in an overall summary, there's a lot of different timelines that colleges will reference on their applications. And those of you that have done this before, or you're really informed, you may know this verbiage very well. Others may not. So we're going to go over it pretty quickly just so you have a summary. And then we're going to dive deeper into specifically early action and early decision, because those are the two primary early opportunities outside of a regular decision timeline that students can apply under. So two categories, there's a non-restrictive application plan and a restrictive application plan. So the non-restrictive, which is most traditional, regular decision. Those are colleges where a student will submit an application by a specified date. It's really important that the application is submitted by that date. They do not typically accept applications after that date, so it needs to be before the date. And then they will receive information if they're admitted or not, also by a certain date or a window of time that the college will communicate. So that's non-binding. The student, this is again traditional, the student will apply to whatever number of colleges that they want. And then once they hear back, they will determine where they're attending based off of the admission decisions they've received. Rolling admission is exactly as it sounds, where applications are open even now. There's some campuses that will have rolling, where students can apply today and hear back in a week or two. So it's ongoing throughout the entire cycle. And a lot of students like to use rolling admission for potentially 1 to 2 schools, just to have an application in for their mental health and personal well-being, know that they're already getting a start on this application process. Maybe it's a school they believe is less selective or is for their standards that they will be admitted to. And so it's always good to have an admission that is ready for you as you consider other campuses as well. So that's ongoing, where students can apply, and there may be a dedicated deadline that the university or college will post, and maybe not. So that's a kind of a different category of schools. Early action is also non-binding. Just the basic early action, that's where students can apply early if the college offers it. Not every college offers early action, and they will receive a decision well in advance of the institution's regular decision window. So we'll go into that a little bit deeper. And then in the other category, restrictive application plans. This is where the commitment can be binding, or there's other considerations that the applicant needs to consider. So early decision, which we're going into, is where students are making a commitment to apply to a first choice institution, where if they are admitted, they will attend. So they know, if I'm going to apply early decision, I've made the decision to attend that campus. And then similar restrictive early action, where a student can apply to an institution of preference and receive a decision early. Depending on the institution, they may be restricted from applying early decision to another school, or early action to another school, or restricted early action to another school. So there's a lot of different criteria when it says restrictive early action. You want to read the fine print really well. It's typically non-binding, that otherwise they call it early decision, but it gives a little bit of wiggle room, but not quite as much as the early action option. And then comparison, this is a helpful tool just to look at if a student is really into the early application options and trying to decide, is early action or early decision better for me? In general, the biggest difference is one is binding and one is not. And we're going to go into later the what to consider with that binding agreement. So early action, students can apply early. They'll receive their admission decision early. They can apply to other schools, regular early as well. Early decision, they can apply early. They'll receive their admission decision early. The agreement is binding and they cannot apply to other schools early. You cannot apply to 2 schools early decision. What if you were admitted to both? How would you commit to both? And then of course, regular decision is not binding. You cannot apply early. You can sometimes submit your application early, but that doesn't mean you'll hear back from the college early. And you can apply to other schools. And usually decisions for most of these groups is May 1st, except for the early decision group and the early action group. And now I'm going to hand it over to Chanelle. We'll do a little deep dive on early action.
Thank you. So with early action, typically what we share with our students is that early action is really just the opportunity to get an early start on the college application process. So for students who have been very eager and ready to start on their college apps once they open in the summer, they've done a lot of their research, maybe starting in junior year, they had the opportunity to visit campuses and meet with college reps. The early action is an appropriate deadline for students. And because of the fact that it is a non-binding option, it does give students the opportunity to apply to universities and colleges and really just to push up the application process so that they can hear back from schools earlier. Sometimes this can be more stressful just because they have to get a lot of their information together and their materials and their supplemental materials in sooner, obviously, than a regular deadline in January, but a lot of our students will access the early action just simply so that they can get everything done sooner and they can submit their application sooner, and then they get their admission decisions earlier than regular decision applicants. So then it gives them a little bit more time in the spring to then decide which campus they then choose to commit to, because they don't actually have to commit to that decision until the national May 1 deadline. Sometimes some universities will also advertise that the early action pool is their more competitive, more selective applicant pool, also depending on more selective majors. So depending on the universities that your students are interested in, sometimes that is the message coming from the university that they will be looking at their more selective candidates in those early action pools. And then that also determines the yield of how many of them they would look at in their regular pool. Sometimes students who apply early may be deferred to the regular applicant pool, which again is also an opportunity for students. So it's not a direct denial, it's a defer, which means then they're still reviewing, they're still taking you into consideration, but they just need a little bit more time to review the other applicants, and then they'll get back to you with those decisions in the regular timeline. Next slide, please. So this graphic is great. So the preparation to apply early, again, you are applying early, you're getting started on those apps typically in the summertime. Usually the admission deadline for early action is November 1st. You are considered earlier, you get your decision back earlier. You do have more time to really make that decision as far as which school you intend to commit to. This also might give students more opportunity to decide based on the financial aid packages that come in and which other colleges and offers they may have. So on one hand, it pushes everything up so they have less time in the fall to get everything done, but then on the back end, it does give them more time to ultimately make that decision because they do have until the May 1 national response date to actually commit. Next slide. So an ideal early action student profile, again, this student has done extensive research, is well informed about the colleges that they'd like to apply to. They've looked into all of those admission websites. They've identified the criteria. They've looked at those requirements. They've gone through and identified the schools that are strong matches for them academically, socially, geographically. They have dedicated time to preparing those college apps, oftentimes starting in the summer. Many of the college applications do open July and August. So students who want to get a head start and they've just had this on their mind since second semester of junior year, and they really started that process early. They have a strategy if they're admitted early, and they have a plan depending on the decisions that start coming in, to, maybe expand those applications into the regular admission season, depending on what those decisions look like. And then they also understand that oftentimes applying early might mean that there may not be as much financial aid information at the time, especially this year with the FAFSA, the Better FAFSA not being released until December, which we do have that webinar coming up. But that'll be, some of that information, universities just won't have it. So students who are opting to apply early are also applying early, knowing that they will be getting those decisions back without that financial aid award information being considered at that time. Next. So some of the advantages to applying early, obviously, the earlier you get your applications in, the earlier you get your decisions back. And again, the more research that you do, the more you hone in, it gives you the opportunity to then really narrow down that list. And then obviously, once you get your decisions, then you might have already gotten the decision that you want. And then you're all set. And sometimes even by December, we have seniors who know where they're going. The stress level goes down because they can get settled knowing that they have their destination, they're ready to go, they can prepare for which campus they plan on attending the following fall. On the flip side, they also have more time to then regroup and create a new game plan for regular decisions if needed, because again, they do have that May 1 national deadline to commit. So even though they may have heard back, they've been able to apply early and they've heard back early, they still do have that May 1 as their deadline. Again, one of the drawbacks being that financial aid restriction piece, because they just might not have as much information. And so sometimes that information comes after the decision has been made. And it could potentially create a more stressful experience because you are under more pressure to get everything in by that November 1 deadline. Also, it being the very beginning of senior year, your semester is just getting started. A lot of students are still getting situated in their classes. So there's just a lot going on in the fall. So again, it's really ideal that students who intend to apply early have gotten a head start in utilizing their summer prior to senior year. Next slide. And now I'll pass it off to Rick.
I'm here. Wow, some great questions in the chat. It's like where you just want to wish you could type like multi-finger to everybody. So thank you for having me here. Early action, probably one of the questions that is probably a little confusing is early action. And what do I like start in the 6th grade? Is that early enough? No, early action refers to the admission process during the student's senior year in high school. We don't want kids applying during their junior year, except for very rare circumstances typically related to athletics. But for the most part, it is definitely relating to application becomes available typically around August 1 or so. And then colleges will start reviewing applications throughout the cycle in the fall. But early means August of rising seniors. I'm going to be a senior in fall of that particular year. So we're in September. So early action refers to I'm a senior in high school and I'm going to be enrolling in college in fall of 2024. So the thing that is probably most confusing this year is that the way financial aid is being done is going to be all kind of mixed up. And some families are afraid to make any kind of commitment because they don't know what it's going to be like. We're not completely sure ourselves. And so we're going to be doing lots of things to make it easier for students to make an important decision. But remember, early action is not the same as early decision. Early action is you are not making any kind of commitment until May 1 in terms of an admission deposit, which is the next thing on the list, which is the housing deposit. As much as we would like all colleges to adhere to the same plan of you can't ask kids to make a non-refundable housing deposit until they even know they're going, but in some places, housing is such a premium that they need to get that in line before they can actually figure out how many spaces they really have. So they may ask for an early housing deposit. However, I encourage you to check very carefully to see if, number one, if it's refundable, but number two, if I don't meet that housing deposit deadline, does that mean I have no chance of getting housing whatsoever? And I think you'd be surprised that a lot of colleges, even though they have an early housing deposit, if you don't meet that, you still will get housing. And so again, this is a very important question to ask of the admission counselor who is visiting your school. And you can easily do that by going online, clicking on the website for the school you're considering, and just or Googling who's my admission counselor. And so if you go to SMU's page, for example, you can say, who's my admission counselor for SMU? And then it'll ask you to identify yourself so we can give you some guidance as to who in our office. And fortunately, it's me. And you would just write that question and I would respond to you. Testing considerations is something, again, it relates to every school's individual policy on whether or not they're test optional and the latest date by which you're able to submit test scores. Some colleges basically are very clear and they say, no, we are not test optional. We must have all your testing done before the start of your senior year, in which case that's their rules. Other places you're test optional and make it clear that you are able to submit test scores even after you've been admitted to improve your chances for scholarship consideration, honors program consideration, or even entrance to a specific major. Again, it's like having a huge, ginormous Sudoku puzzle where you're trying to figure out where things are lining up. So make yourself a fabulous spreadsheet where you can keep track of all the answers of all these from all these different colleges. Because it's a joint process between you and your counselor, it's very, very important that you follow your school's deadlines. Some schools say, sorry, all requests for letters of recommendation for any applicant who is going to be applying early action or early decision, or UC, which is kind of floating in the middle of that time frame, you must have your request into us by September 15th. That's only a few days away. Some may say you have until October 1st. Some may say just get us the request 2 weeks before we actually have to submit it because we've already written your letter of recommendation. But it's a matter of following directions of, number one, what your school is saying, but also number two, for the school that you're applying to. Some students request that your application be complete by the November 1 deadline, which is their early action. Some say, yeah, just get your application in by November 1st, but be sure you're working with your counselors to make sure that that information is coming to the individual schools in time for us to read it. And they may even say, yeah, you can apply by November 1st, but make sure everything's in by November 8th or November 15th, etc. Now, when you apply for admission, early action, my favorite answer is, it depends. It depends on every school. Some have, sorry, we either admit or deny. Some say we either admit or waitlist. Some will say you're admitted, you're denied, or we may actually, we like you, but we're not sure yet. So we're going to hold on to you, kind of, till the regular decision process. But the kind of part is, yeah, you've been deferred admission to be reconsidered, but you have to let us know you're still interested. It's not automatic. Some schools it's automatic where you're automatically reviewed again, whether you ask to or not. Some schools like SMU is like, no, we want to make sure you're still interested and not have to keep bugging you about where's your updated fall grades, any new information. Are you so unless you tell us you're still interested and we make it really easy where we actually click on a form that says, yes, I'm still interested. And here's the date that our requirement is that we need fall grades. That's what will happen. So every school has different kinds of things that will happen. And the number one question I get, is it better to apply early, knowing that I'm probably going to be deferred because I'm not even close, but does that improve my chances to show that I'm really interested by applying early? Other schools are like, you've given us enough information to make a no decision. So, but in a way, I feel you have nothing to lose by applying early because congratulations, you're admitted. Yay! You can start buying all the swag you need. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. Well, guess what? You can help working with your counselor, narrow down your list of schools that you're considering so that you're applying to schools that may be more in range of the schools that are better matches for you. And if you're deferred, well, that means they still like something about you. It's like asking someone on a date and they say, you know what? I'll get back to you. It wasn't a no, wasn't a yes, but at least they're still thinking yes. And so definitely I strongly encourage to do early action, because guess what? If you find out when you're visiting all your relatives all over the country and world for Thanksgiving and Christmas, it gives you a chance to actually visit with them and visit the schools that are in the neighborhood. And maybe on the way, you have changed planes in Chicago and you're visiting all your favorite schools in Chicago. Notice I didn't say Dallas because I didn't want to be all about SMU, but let's say you're visiting schools in Chicago. That gives you a chance to actually add more insight. So when you make a decision, you had that opportunity to visit. So on this next slide, you're going to see, isn't that very slick? Early decision is, I'm so adamant about that, what that is. You have to really know what you're getting into. And my litmus test is, you've spoken to your girlfriend or boyfriend, you've spoken to your parents, you've spoken to your pet rock, you've spoken to your dog or cat, you've spoken to, if I didn't mention your parents, you've spoken to your parents, you've spoken to your counselors, you got out a Ouija board and spoke to your great-great-great-grandmother, and you asked the question, is this the school for me? If anybody says no, don't do it, because there's some hesitation there, especially girlfriend or boyfriend. You're going to break up anyway. So make sure that you're picking schools that are appropriate for you as you go through this process. First and foremost, you're going to have 3 basic conversations. Number 1, is it the right place for me? You visited or you've seen so many pictures and videos and you've been to all their presentations. You have friends who go there and they say, oh my God, Chanelle, it would be the perfect school for you. You are such a student. Oh, that's for you. And then you feel comfortable making that decision. Part number 2 is you've had that academic conversation. You pretty much are solid about what you want to study, and they have what you offer. But if you go to a school and, wow, I'm really deciding between, I don't know, French studies and nursing, the school doesn't have nursing, you're playing the odds that you won't change your mind into nursing. And it may be an awkward fit for you being at a school where suddenly they don't have the major that you want to study. And that's an important question to ask about early decision. Are you being admitted to the university, or are you being admitted to the major? For example, like at SMU, you're being admitted to the university. You're not being admitted to, say, for example, our business school. So make sure you have that clearly in your head, because nothing's worse than, yay, I got into the kinesiology program. No, you didn't. You got admitted to the university and wait, okay, sorry, I want to take it back. I don't want to go there anymore. You and your parents and your counselor are signing a contract that says, if I am admitted, I am definitely coming. If I'm admitted, I'm going to submit my enrollment deposit. If I'm admitted, I'm going to withdraw all my other applications, which leads me to my 3rd point. Early decision means that you're going to come regardless of the major, irregardless of what. Wait, I thought I got admitted early. Don't I get the penthouse suite overlooking the pool and I have, housekeeping service? You're admitted to the university. We didn't say you were getting the penthouse. You're just, you're in line with everybody else. Find out everything that is involved with that process, including the financial aid part. If financial aid is an issue, make sure that you had the financial conversation with your families about, if we don't get anything, are we still going to come? Because it is a commitment that you're making. If finances are an issue, don't do early decision. Do not. If you feel that, you know what, we can make it work regardless if we get financial aid or not, and you meet the other 2 that I mentioned, the social fit as well as the academic fit, then absolutely, positively, you should strongly consider an early decision. after again talking with your girlfriend or boyfriend, well, we know how that goes, with your brother or sister, put your dog on your lap and say, so buddy, I'm leaving, but are you okay with this? Talk to your aunts, your uncles, everybody. And if they're saying, oh my goodness, Chanelle, this is the perfect place for you, then seriously consider it. Now, the third bullet point, early decision admission rates, they mean absolutely nothing. Every school decisions do not, because you don't know where you are in comparison to other kids that apply. They may say, yeah, we take 20% of our class and then we cap it. It's all jumbled all up together. Just be aware of each school's policy. Some say we will only take a certain percentage early decision. Some, like SMU, if you're qualified, we'll take you now because that's one less student we have to worry about later on. So we don't have any caps on the number of kids that will take early decision. In general or by school, let's say all the kids who apply from La Costa Canyon are phenomenal. We know they are, but let's say they all apply, they're all doing early decision. We have no trouble taking them all. Likewise, we have no trouble denying them all if they're not qualified. So applying early decision doesn't affect our review of the application. But these are great questions to ask each of the schools that you're applying to, you meaning students, not the parents. You, the students, are applying to ask those very important questions about what are my chances of getting in early decision? Are they better or worse? And the answer for most colleges, well, it depends because we don't know who else is applying. Right. On the next slide, you will see, and it's not my talking point, so I will be quiet.
Thank you. So as you can see from the high school perspective, again, with the students who are choosing to apply early decision, just as Rick was sharing, this is a binding agreement. This is a contract that the student and the parents and counselors are signing that if the student applies and the student gets in, they have every intention of attending. So this process, again, the early decision deadlines to apply is typically the November 1 deadline. And then they usually receive their admission decisions in the middle of December. So again, this is new this year with the Better FAFSA not even being released until December. So any early decisions are definitely going to be coming out before any financial aid packages are going to be considered. So that's something to take into consideration, particularly for this year. Again, students are only allowed to apply to one university early decision because this is a binding agreement. So some students will choose to apply early action to other schools as well as regular, depending on the decision that they get back from their early decision school. But early decision, they are only allowed to apply early decision to one college or university. And then ultimately, if that decision does come back and they are admitted because they did sign that agreement that they are intending to go, then they do have to actually withdraw all of their other applications from their other schools.
Chanelle, I'm going to jump in for one quick moment. On the third bullet point about financial aid, this is where every lawyer, sorry, that sounded really harsh. Every student parent suddenly becomes a lawyer. There is my loophole. Adequate. I'm sorry, you didn't give me enough money, so I'm gonna put my hooks in the water. Is that inappropriate? Hooks in the water with other schools to see what kind of scholarships they give me, and then, sorry, my other school, they're admitting me with more money. Sorry, school that I applied early decision to wasn't adequate enough. Yeah, we don't use that as a legitimate, unless it's, wow, unfortunately you had some financial disasters happen to you and your family, etc. Those are valid considerations. But if it's, sorry, that other school is giving me more, it's like job hunting where I'm going to take your job off for now, but it isn't for real until I see what the other people offer me. That's not the way it's supposed to work. Okay, so adequate, ignore that word adequate at all, because we will not let you out of it.
Thank you. All right, so the ideal early decision student profile, this student, if they are applying early decision, has definitely done their research and identified their top choice school. Oftentimes, this student has had this university in mind for many years, maybe since they were very young. This has been something that they've been dreaming of. They've worked extremely hard all throughout high school to make sure that they not only were meeting the requirements, but exceeding the requirements. And it's a strong match academically, socially, geographically. They would get in, they would go, they would study there, they would live there, they would love it. So a lot of time and dedication has to go into the research and the time that it takes to really identify a school that you intend to apply early decision to. The student, we really encourage students to have visited the campus and to have met with college reps and really had the opportunity to express that interest, have that face-to-face conversation. The demonstrated interest is huge with early decision. And also, again, the student has taken into consideration the fact that if they are admitted, they're signing that contract, and they are going to be withdrawing all of their other applications. They also are going to have a plan, because ultimately, if they get that decision back and they don't get in, then they do have a plan for applying to other campuses and are, ready to go through that process. And then again, they all are also aware of that conversation about the financial aid piece, and knowing that they are committing to that university no matter what that financial aid package eventually looks like, because oftentimes the financial aid information is released after the decision has been made. So this is all things to consider before deciding if you're going to apply early decision or not. Next slide. All right, so again, an advantage to applying early decision, similar to early action, just the word early, you just get it done early. It's a lot of stress to get everything in and to really make that commitment, but ultimately it gives the student that peace of mind once they've heard back in the middle of December. And if it's the decision that they wanted to hear, then it definitely makes for an easier remainder of senior year. It gives them additional time to prepare for attending that campus. They also do commit before the May 1 deadline. So oftentimes with the early decision deadline, they do have to enroll and make that housing deposit sooner, which Rick talked about. And then also, same as with the early action on the flip side, if they don't get the decision that they were anticipating, it does give them a little bit more time to do a little more research and expand their options if they decide to apply regular to some other campuses if needed. And again, those drawbacks are going to be applying, not knowing exactly what that financial aid package will look like. And then again, this can be very stressful because of the fact that it is a binding agreement, and it is something that parents, counselor, and student all do sign that contract saying, if you in fact get in, you will be attending. So lots to consider with the early decision option. Next one. All right, and I'll pass it back to Rick.
So one of the questions came up, and I'll just jump into this before I go into my slide, and that's it. Okay, if I apply early decision and get in, they already know I'm coming. So does that mean they're going to be a little stingier in financial aid and merit scholarships? Every school is different. Most schools that have early action, early decision, regular decision will lump all their students together in some master bucket of financial aid review. It doesn't matter when you actually get into that bucket, be it via early decision or early action or regular decision or early decision 2, you're evaluated the same. The computer doesn't make any distinctions upon when you are actually admitted. Most colleges, though, will have some kind of, to be considered for academic scholarships or financial aid, you must meet a particular deadline. And so long as you meet that, they honestly are being equally generous or equally stingy when you get admitted. So don't let that deter you from applying early or doing early decision, thinking that I don't want to hurt my chances. They know they, got me in a shoulder lock or headlock and I'm coming. We don't really, we want you to come. And so they're going to not give me as much money. So don't let that be a deterrent. Pros and cons. Oh my goodness. Think about I know where I'm going. I've been coming to the school since I was a little kid. I have pictures of me wearing diapers with my school logo on it. I want to go to this school. I already know where I'm going to live. Da, da, da. It's there's no question in my mind that I'm qualified and this is the place for me. Get that stress off your shoulders. There is so much stress going on right now that not having this will really help you as you become a healthy person your senior year. And we don't want you all burnt out, because applying to college is like having another AP class. And so if you know early decision is right for you, and like I said, you've spoken to all those people, the rock, the pet, the girlfriend, boyfriend, etc., and they're all saying yes, then yeah, do it. The negative side of it is that all colleges don't meet full need. So you may not get as much financial aid as you think you might be eligible for, compared to another school where you did apply early action and you got their financial aid award. You can't go back in time and undo your early decision agreement. So if financial aid is still a concern to you, then I really am cautioning you against doing early action. Early decision. This would also include your, wow, who wouldn't want to give me a merit scholarship? I'm president of this, I do this and that. You don't know how merit scholarships are going to be awarded. Is it an academic award, which is what SMU offers? We don't offer merit awards, they're academic awards based upon your academic accomplishments, irrespective of your position as student body president or whatnot, or how well your essay was reviewed, or all those kinds of factors. Those aren't academic factors, so it's an academic award. So this is where sometimes kids are a little confused about, that kid got a scholarship. I've been student body president my senior year and president of the senior class, junior class, sophomore class. I'm captain of the football team and captain of the cheer squad. I wrote the most amazing essay, and why didn't I get a scholarship? I know my grades are just okay, but I deserve a scholarship. If you are counting on getting a scholarship or making the particular athletic team, or making the cheer squad, nothing is guaranteed. So that is definitely something that I would tell you, be mindful of, because you're signing an agreement that says, if I'm admitted, I'm going to enroll, irregardless of all that other stuff. But that doesn't mean you don't like the university less. You love the university, then go ahead and do early action. Again, really, really important to read the fine print. And this is that last comment about early action versus early decision. Read the fine print of each university. Are you being admitted to the nursing program? Are you being admitted to the computer science engineering program if I get admitted early decision? You don't want to be disappointed that you didn't fully read the instructions and that now you've committed to a university not even in that major, and that's the main reason why you were coming. So, for example, SMU has a phenomenal dance program. We tell kids, do not apply early decision, because you don't know if you're going to pass a dance audition. You may think you're the best sugar plum fairy we've ever seen it. We may disagree. And so you may be admitted to the university, but not to the dance program, but you did ED, which means you're coming, but you're not, and it gets all messy. So be mindful of, are you applying to the university or are you applying to that particular major? Okay, I'm confused. How can you that? Okay, how can it, I'm reading this question out loud because it's regarding something I just said. I am confused. How can a student get accepted to a major? I'm not quite understanding this question. We'll come back to that question at the very, very end. All right. So, how do you know which option is best for you, whether it is early action or early decision? Here are those things that I'm saying. Early decision is right for you if you're totally in love with the school. You've done thorough research and you know exactly they have the major that you want to study. There are certain things that I really want to do. They have the most amazing vegan buffet line in the cafeteria, and I'm vegan, and that I need to have that. I've been to the campus, or I know lots of people have been there. My test scores, if I'm submitting them, they're in range. My grades are exemplary, and I've done lots of activities. I am so in the sweet spot for this kind of student that school is looking for. If you can't click all of those, early decision might not be the best choice for you, in which case you need to reach out to your counselor and have a bullet point by bullet point conversation. Well, they will ask you specifically, so Jayme, why do you love this school? Sorry, I need a bigger answer than it's pretty. So you need to be specific in your answers, Miss Jayme, and then of course she will be when her parent or counselor is talking to you. All right. Part 2 of this is it depends on the financial aid. If you feel that financial aid, if I don't get it, I can't afford to go, don't consider early decision. It's very important. That seems to be a myth out there that, and I've heard this at every single school I've been going to in the last month, where students and parents will be asking that same question. I heard you can back out if you don't get enough money. Don't get enough money is very subjective. We will follow the guidelines set out by the Department of Education and determine eligibility. However, just because you're eligible for that doesn't mean you will get that. And that doesn't mean that schools can't make their own adjustments. And that's why you might be getting a different financial aid from school A versus school B well before you have to actually submit your deposit if you're going early decision, and you can't decide, well, I like school B better. You can't do that. You've made a commitment to school A, and if you know that school A is where you want to go, regardless of the dollar signs and how much you're getting, then do early decision. But if you can't make that statement, caution, caution, caution about going early decision to the school that you or your family may not be able to afford. I think that was my last slide. There you go.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you. Thank both of you. We've had a lot of really good questions, so we want to highlight a few of those. And one thing I don't think I mentioned at the beginning is this presentation and recording will be posted on our district website and the college and career subsection, and also all of our high school counseling websites. And hopefully we'll be able to email all, at least sophomore, juniors and seniors, the recording of the presentations after each of these. So they should come to your email, especially if you registered for this event. Something to piggyback on what Rick just said, I know in my years as a school counselor when I was at Torrey Pines, and school before that, it's the hardest thing and the hardest conversation to have with a student when they've applied early action or early decision, gotten in, even regular decision, gotten into their dream school, and then their parents have to have that hard conversation of, you can't go, we can't afford it, or the financial aid package wasn't what we expected, or family member number 37 who said they were going to put money towards the college account never followed up with what they said. So those hard conversations now financially, to really sit down and look at the cost of schools, look at what you're able to contribute. And like we've all talked about, it's hard this year because there's a lot of unknown, and it's hard to commit to a binding program when you have an unknown financial aid package. Usually in other years, if you're a junior right now listening or a sophomore, usually you submit the financial aid information, the FAFSA or the CSS profile in October. You could do it as early as October. And so in that case, it could change the whole dynamic of the admissions office. Their decision is, and I'm going to speak in general, every campus is different, of course, but their decision is in the admission office, and then the financial aid package is in the financial aid office. So they don't always connect and discuss. And it's not like Rick calls financial aid and is like, hey, Jayme's the best. She's early decision. Like, that girl is amazing. Give her all the things you can. It doesn't always work that way. So just know as you're going into it that to just be as cautious, I think, from the financial aspect as possible, because that's a hard conversation to have with the student after they've been admitted. Okay, so we're going to go into a few of the questions that you all were talking about. And the most recent ones, I think what Rick's point that he was making was really valid, and especially in early decision, which is a really small percent of kids that do early decision, just so you know. In my 20 years of being a high school counselor, I think I've had, 10. And it's been a very deep conversation between me, the student, the parent, phone calls. And like Rick and Chanelle both said, when I would sign my name on that contract, that is my professional credibility on the line. And if a student doesn't follow through with that binding contract, that does not look good for me and the relationships I have with these counselors, and they're our colleagues. So every counselor has that professional obligation. The parent has the ethical obligation. The student, this is a huge character conversation. So that contract should not be taken lightly. But when Rick was talking about the majors, when students are applying and maybe they're getting admitted to the university, but not the major, that's a question to have for every campus. And so if a student's applying early action, regular decision is probably a little different. A lot of campuses do admit by major, some do not. So it varies based on the campus you're applying to. And some majors, like Rick mentioned, dance, creative studies, engineering, nursing, are like schools within a school. So it's not like you can say, oh, I'm applying to this engineering major and then always be like, you know what, I'm going to change my mind to art history next year. I just don't think this is working out. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's a school change. Sometimes it's a totally different application process. So again, going back to the actual campus and reading the fine print on the details with majors. And a lot of campuses also don't admit by major, and they are like, we just want you to be here, and then do the whole buffet and take out all these different classes and then decide what you want your major to be by a dedicated time. So it varies based on the campuses. Rick, I was going to have you speak to one of the questions that was asked about, let's see here. Well, someone did just ask about the CSS profile. I think I mentioned that, but that's, and Chanelle answered, it's an additional financial aid application. So some private universities do ask that you complete the CSS profile, and you can find it. There's a link that Chanelle included, but it's, you can Google CSS profile, and then you can also see the list of colleges that require that, either in addition to the FAFSA or in lieu of. Let's see here. Most of the questions that were asked were about the major. So someone did ask, this is for you, Rick, if you do apply early through the early application process and you do not get in, can you reapply through the regular process? And you did mention it earlier, but I want you to re-discuss the deferral.
Absolutely. This is where it gets a little confusing, is that you're not really reapplying. Your application is just instead of being reviewed early, it's being reviewed and again, it varies from school to school to school. It gets reviewed again. So you're not having to submit an application other than maybe a document that says, yes, I'm still really interested in your school. Sometimes for some schools, it's automatic. Every kid not admitted automatically gets shoved back. Shove sounds really harsh, gets moved into the general review process for the next round. It varies from school to school to school, but this is where it's so important to read the directions. And usually in the decision letter that says, unfortunately, we can't offer you admission at this time. We would like to defer your decision till later. Here's what you need to do. And it may send your fall grades. Like at SMU, you have to send your fall grades. You will not be reevaluated, even if you tell us you're still interested, until we have your fall grades. Otherwise, your application is exactly the same. We need to see something new to either confirm or change our initial decision. So following directions about what the requirement is, you must pat your head, rub your tummy 3 times. If that's what they're saying, then you do it, because they're expecting that. Okay, read the directions.
And something you just said reminded me too, and so much of this is strategy for you students and parents out there deciding how to handle this process. For students who maybe you're a senior and you have so much more to show the colleges, maybe you haven't done your internship, maybe you haven't taken the AP course and gotten the mid-year grade, maybe you haven't started your job at Tilley's yet and shown that you're an amazing employee, maybe you haven't gotten all the accolades. And those are things that would be really valuable in your application. Early is probably not a great opportunity for you. Waiting until regular is perfectly fine because it gives you a chance to show and share more. On the other hand, if a student already has a laundry list of those things, share them now. That's great. And it gives you a great opportunity to get, for all the reasons we've already shared, to get the process started early. And depending on your own personal sanity through this process, that might be the right move for you. So really considering yourself in the process and your personality too.
And I was going to give, I'm glad you added the part B of that, because I would say if it's that one thing that's keeping you from being admitted, maybe in general, it may not be a good fit for you anyways. For us, it was actually more competitive in the regular cycle. So there were students who waited to apply regular, who didn't get in, who, if they had applied early, would have gotten in, and vice versa. There were students who applied early who did get in, that if they had waited, they weren't competitive at all. So every school is different. And this is where you need to make that ginormous spreadsheet to keep track of what the plan is for each individual school.
I hope everyone knows about that spreadsheet. They will talk about it in Building a Balanced College List, but what he's talking about is a Google Doc, a Google spreadsheet. That's what I like, because then you can share it with your parent, you can share it with your aunt, you can share it with whoever's helping you, and edits. And it has the columns of everything: the college name on the left, when is the deadline, what are the deadline options, what is the cost, is it a WUI school? Well, like with the Western Undergraduate Exchange, is there any opportunity for an in-state tuition and an out-of-state campus? Do they offer, what major are you looking at for that school? Any of the criteria that's important to you. So no one can make the list for you. It kind of has to come from your own, the way you think about this whole process. And I highly recommend that you share it with counselors or parents so that you can get a second set of eyes as well. A few other questions are coming in. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, students, if you're in the room, use this as an opportunity to say, okay, parents, you're stressing me out. You can only talk to me once a week. In the meantime, Google Doc to your heart's content. And I will add so much information there that nothing's more embarrassing where you're banging on the bed like, honey, we need to talk about college. And your kid is saying, I'm in the bathroom. Can it wait just a little bit? And give them access to the Google Doc so they can help you with deadlines coming up. That's a very valid thing, but it gives them a chance to go to see where you are in the process.
And Chanelle, do you know, does Torrey Pines have a template of a spreadsheet that we're talking about that students can use to copy, like a Google Doc, or have you guys shared that at all?
I don't know if we have a spreadsheet.
We have one on the district website. If you go to sduhsd.net and search in the top college and career, our college and career page is there, and you click on the 9 to 12 section, and there's like lots of words, but they're all going to make a lot of sense right now after you listen to us. And one of them is get organized, and there's a link to a Google Doc of a template. It's kind of like a scavenger hunt. So feel free to ask your counselor. Anyone can email me. We'll show our emails at the end if someone has a question, and I can share the direct link as well. So there was a question about I know that there's a lot of juniors on this call. So again, to reiterate, all of the college application deadlines we're talking about are senior year. So this, like Rick said, it really starts senior year. If you're a junior, great. I'm so glad you're here, because it's always good to be planning ahead, especially if you're considering early. A lot of the work that should be done over the summer helps you hit the ground running. As counselors, we come back to work in August doing schedule changes and all those exciting things, and kids are like, excuse me, can I have a letter? We're like, really? It's August 1st. Have you been spending your whole summer on this? And they're like, and that's great. But we're just, there's a lot of information that counselors send out while they're doing other things, and we know kids are preparing for the college stuff. But right around now is when all of our high schools are doing senior audits and senior parent nights. So I encourage you to go to those events, because this information is general for district-wide, but all of our 5 high schools have different protocol for letters of recommendation and for resources and for opportunities to meet with a counselor to go through individual questions. So with that, we do on the slide deck that we're sharing, we do have a few different resources you can reference. I know I've talked about the college and career website a lot, so that's linked. And then our events page is separate. That's for all these recordings and webinars are all listed there. Our spring college night, that was last May. We have all the recordings from those sessions too. So if there's a different topic you're looking for. And then there it is. And then finally, we have our emails, if I can figure out a way to go back, that you can email me at jayme.cambra@sduhsd.net and then chanelle.lary@sduhsd.net if you have questions. So any other final words, Chanelle or Rick, before we end this webinar tonight?
It was a great session.
Great.
Thanks for spending your evening with us.
Yes, thank you so much. We hope to see you back next week for Finding Your Fit and Building a Balanced College List. Have a good evening and take care. Thank you, Mr. Diaz and Mrs. Lary. Have a good night.
Thank you.